Hello and welcome to 5.11. This is your ecological footprint, and we'll also talk about your carbon footprint in this particular chapter. So let's see what we got. We are going to look at some variables that are measured in this thing called an ecological footprint, aka what impact do you have, and how the ecological footprints are going to look at things like resource demands, which of course we have a ton, waste production, which we have a ton, and that is required for an individual or an entire society, aka a country. So let's take a look. The ecological footprint is a measure of how much a person or group consumes, and this is going to be expressed in land area, because remember, the Earth has a finite land area. And some factors that land is required for, and some of these things you think about every day and some you don't. Food production, and that comes in terms of growing food and animals that live on land that we will eat. The raw materials, as simple as wood for homes, wood for paper, metal, plastic, which is a petroleum-based item. Housing, you have to live on these pieces of land. The electricity that we need, the burning of coal, natural gas, using of the sun and wind, even though wind and solar are renewable, they still need items have to be placed on land to capture that energy. And then finally, getting rid of materials. And the place you put it is called a landfill, or you may refer to it as the dumps. And also by disposing of some waste where it gets burned, that is also putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So all of these things come into play in your ecological footprint. So they have this giant foot here, and you can see it's a portion of it is your carbon footprint, and we'll talk about that. That is what the energy burned, and aka the CO2 put in the atmosphere. Where you live, what you take, food and things you need to eat and survive, and of course the ocean. You cannot forget about the ocean. So your ecological footprint versus a carbon footprint, and this is, sometimes people will put them together, but they are not the same. So your ecological footprint is measured in land, and a hectare is a word I've said a few times, but it is an interesting measurement of 2.47 acres. So a hectare is about, I don't know, if you had to do a measurement, maybe a few hundred feet, maybe 800 by 800, 900 by 900, something like that. That's about what a hectare is. And just as a number, your ecological footprint would be measured in hectares. So let's say it was 2.6. Your carbon footprint is two things. It is the actual amount of CO2 you put into the air, which is measured in tons per year. And then you have a percentage. Your carbon footprint is a total of your ecological footprint. And again, these details, you're not going to see this. So I just wanted to just introduce to you some terms. And your carbon footprint, once again, is measured in tons of CO2 produced each year. And that would be the actual, almost like a weight, if you will. And that is all of the CO2 that is released from you or groups of people or other activities. Material goods, food production, which uses a ton of CO2 because, again, there's a lot of machinery needed in food prep, from the machinery with wheels on it and things that pick fruit and vegetables and things, and then all the way to the machinery that is used to process these things. And of course, energy use, just standard issue gas in your car, heat, and electricity. All these things require the burning of fossil fuels to generate these things like heat and electricity. You increase your carbon footprint by being rich. So, for example, Americans have a very high, I guess we'll call it salary, if you will. And we have things like larger homes that require more energy to heat and cool. We get to go places. We travel in planes and in cars. And there are just straight up more resources needed, like the metal that goes into the cars that we make and all of the metals that go into the phones and computers that we have. Meat consumption, if we eat a lot of meat, as you learned back in one of the other previous sections here, meat production, or the animals, they use up a lot of land space. They use up a lot of water. They use up a lot of energy. And then we have more heating, more electricity, more travel, more plastics, more kind of things we just throw out. And the more affluent you are, the larger your footprint. And America has, of course, the largest ecological footprint, which we'll see coming up. If you want to decrease that footprint, if you want to help, you will do your best to be part of a wind area using renewable energy if you have the ability, solar panels. If you live in a place where hydroelectric is a possibility. So if you are from Washington or Oregon, all of those things are used out there. They tap into the Columbia River. There were a lot of those windmills and a lot of solar farms. You can also take public transportation. You yourself do not have to drive. You can jump on something with a lot of other people. If you can switch over to a plant-based diet using less meat in your diet, meat, again, uses a lot of resources to produce. And just overall consume less, travel less, and try to use less energy. Turn off the lights, things like that. Don't have 4 refrigerators in your home, each with 1/3 full. Get it down to 1. If the world lived like America, we'd be in big trouble. The ecological footprint, once again, can be also expressed in the number of Earths required if the entire world consumed the same level of resources as any other given group. So the current U.S. footprint would require 5.1 Earths worth of resources to keep America going at our current rate. Now, obviously, some of the third world countries in Africa are using, 0.01 of the Earth's resources. So by average, at least we're not going to crumble the whole entire world. So you can see the present global Earth footprint is a little bit bigger than 1 Earth. Not good. We are a little bit bigger than 5 Earths worth of resources and things. So again, not looking good for the future. The current global footprint, as I had said, is a little bit more than 1.85. And again, that takes into account all of the countries. Not good either. It's still more than 1. So we are working very hard to figure out ways to kind of cheat that. And we talked about in the last unit, or one of the last units, of fertilizers and GMOs, ways to kind of grow or trick plants into growing faster and better and longer. So finishing this up, this is a chart that you may be up against in the future, and you can see some of the smaller footprint places like Somalia and Rwanda versus places like the United States, Australia, and Canada. So the question for today, describe a one factor that accounts for the difference in the carbon footprint between the United States and Uganda, and explain one environmental consequence. So think about all of the things we talked about. Write that down, and hopefully that was helpful.